You think you know how this story ends, don't you? A few good deeds, a massive reward, roll credits. But you weren't there. You didn't see the grease under my fingernails that wouldn't scrub out. You didn't feel the cold dread of a final eviction notice. And you certainly didn't stand beside me in the rain, facing down the blinding blue lights of a police cruiser, with my 7-year-old daughter's tiny, trusting hand clutched in mine. This isn't just a story about a payoff. It's a story about the day I, a broken-down mechanic and a failing father, forgot how to be a hero, and in doing so, found a way to become one. So stick around. It's how we got from that rain-soaked night to a sunrise filled with the roar of 200 luxury engines. That's the part you need to hear. The rain wasn't falling. It was attacking. A relentless, icy assault that turned the cracked pavement of our dead-end street into a shallow river. It was the kind of rain that felt personal, as if the sky itself had decided our little corner of the world needed a good, hard washing away. I hunched my shoulders against the downpour, my worn-out denim jacket offering as much protection as a paper napkin. In my right hand, I held a small, warm one. Maya's. "Almost home, sweet pea," I said, my voice a forced cheerfulness that sounded hollow even to me. She didn't answer. She just squeezed my hand tighter, her small boots sending up splashes. I could feel the weight of her silence. It was heavier than the 2 bags of discounted groceries I carried in my other hand. It was the silence of a child who had learned, far too young, that a daddy's promises were fragile things. The promise I'd broken today was a big one. The school science fair. Her project, a meticulously crafted volcano, made from papier, MCH, and hope, was supposed to erupt with baking soda and vinegar glory at 3 p.m. At 2:47 p.m., Mr. Henderson's 10-year-old sedan had given up the ghost. A seized timing belt turning my last hope of a quick payment into a 4-hour grease monkey nightmare. I'd missed it. I'd called the school, my voice thick with shame, asking them to tell Maya I was on my way. When I finally picked her up from the after-school program, her teacher had given me a look that was part pity, part condemnation. Maya had just looked at me with those big brown eyes, her mother's eyes, and asked, "Is the car okay, Daddy?" The car. Always the damn car. My life was a symphony of sputtering engines and the clink of tools. A never-ending struggle to keep the rust buckets of our neighborhood running just long enough for their owners to pay me, so I could in turn keep a roof over our heads. Our home was a small, drafty duplex that smelled perpetually of motor oil and damp concrete. It was a far cry from the life I'd promised Sarah I'd give them before the cancer stole her away, leaving me with a 2-year-old in a grief so vast I sometimes forgot to breathe. As we sloshed towards our driveway, a sight made me stop dead. Parked haphazardly, its front tires mounted on my scraggly lawn, was a car. But not just any car. A Rolls-Royce. A Phantom. It was a slab of obsidian and polished chrome, a spaceship that had landed in our swamp of potholes and despair. The rain sheeting off its flawless surface seemed to defy the very physics of our shabby street. "Whoa," Maya whispered, her first word in an hour. "Is that a king's car?" Before I could answer, the world erupted in strobes of blue and red. A police cruiser, its lights cutting through the gloom, pulled up behind the Rolls, blocking the street. 2 officers stepped out, their postures rigid and official. My heart, already a heavy, tired thing in my chest, sank further. Trouble. It always found us, one way or another. I instinctively pulled Maya closer, tucking her behind my leg. The driver's door of the Rolls opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my tow truck. Even through the distorting curtain of rain, I could see he was older, maybe in his late 60s. With a sharp, intelligent face currently contorted in frustration, he held up his hands in a placating gesture as one of the officers. A broad-shouldered man with a voice like gravel started speaking. "Sir, step away from the vehicle. We received a call about a reckless driver matching this description running multiple red lights." The man's voice, when it came, was cultured, laced with a British accent and a thin veneer of control. "Officer, there's been a misunderstanding. A rather urgent family matter." I'm afraid I was. Distracted. Distracted enough to almost cause a 3-car pileup on Main. The other officer, younger woman, chimed in, her tone no sense. License and registration, please. The man, Mr. Sterling, as I would later learn, patted his suit jacket, then his trousers. A look of genuine panic flashed across his face. My wallet. It's not here. I must have left it at the club, or in my other suit. Officer, please, you have to understand. My granddaughter, she's in the hospital. St. Jude's. It's her heart. They just called me. The male officer, whose nameplate read Dawson, remained unmoved. No license, no registration. Step over to the cruiser, sir. We're going to have to take you in. Can't be serious. Mr. Sterling's composure cracked. His voice rose, edged with a desperation that I recognized. It wasn't the desperation of poverty, but the desperation of powerlessness. The kind you feel when the one thing that truly matters to you is in jeopardy, and the entire stupid, bureaucratic world seems determined to stand in your way. I need to get to the hospital now. You can follow me, escort me, anything. Protocol, sir, Officer Dawson said, his hand moving to the cuffs on his belt. Now, turn around and place your hands on the vehicle. This was the moment. The pivot. I should have taken Maya inside, made her a grilled cheese, and tried to forget the whole messy scene. We had our own problems. The eviction notice was sitting on the kitchen counter, a pink slip of doom. I had 72 hours to come up with 2 months of back rent, or we were on the street. The last thing I needed was to get involved with the police. But then I looked at Mr. Sterling, not at his suit or his car, but at his eyes. In the flickering police lights, I saw it. The same raw animal fear I'd felt sitting in a hospital chair holding Sarah's hand as she took her last ragged breath. It was a fear that transcended money and status. It was the universal language of potentially losing someone you love. And I looked at Maya, peeking out from behind my leg, her eyes wide with a confusion that no child should ever have to feel. My feet started moving before my brain had fully processed the decision. I walked towards the trio, pulling Maya along with me. Excuse me, officers? All three of them turned to look at me. The officers with professional suspicion, Mr. Sterling with a flicker of bewildered hope. This is a police matter, sir. Please step back, Officer Dawson said. I know him, I said, the lie feeling strangely solid on my tongue. He's my uncle. My Uncle Alistair. Mr. Sterling's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He was quick. He gave a slow, deliberate nod. Leo, thank God. These officers seem to think I'm a public menace. I focused on the female officer, her face slightly less hardened than her partner's. Look. His granddaughter, Chloe, she's really sick. He's not a criminal. He's just scared. We all get scared, right? I chanced to look at Maya, then back at the officer. If it was your kid in that hospital, what would you be doing? A flicker of something empathy crossed her face. I pressed on. His wallet. He was at my place earlier for dinner. He must have left it on the counter. I can vouch for him. He's a good man. The rain continued to drum its frantic rhythm on the roofs of the cars. Officer Dawson looked from me, a soaking wet man in a grease-stained jacket, to Mr. Sterling, a picture of panicked wealth, and back again. The story was full of holes you could drive a truck through. You're telling me this is your uncle? Dawson asked, skepticism dripping from every word. On my mother's side, I said. Praying my mother, a sweet woman who'd spent her life as a school librarian, wouldn't mind this posthumous fictionalization. He's always been a bit scatterbrained. A genius with numbers, but can't remember where he put his keys half the time. Mr. Sterling played his part beautifully. He let out a shaky, frustrated sigh. It's the truth. The girl. She's only 8. She was born with a defective valve. They said it was stable, but now? His voice broke, and this time, it didn't seem like an act. The raw tremor in it was real. The female officer, Officer Gable, looked at her partner. Dawson. The call was for reckless driving, not an accident. No one was hurt. Dawson chewed the inside of his cheek, the blue and red lights painting his face in alternating shades of doubt and duty. He looked at Maya, who was now staring at Mr. Sterling with a heartbreaking expression of pity. "All right, die," he finally grunted, the sound like gravel giving way. "Here's what's going to happen. You," he pointed at Mr. Sterling, "are not driving. You're in no state. Your nephew here is going to drive you to the hospital. We'll follow behind. You will settle your affairs at the hospital. And then you will come down to the station first thing in the morning with your license and registration to sort this out. Understood?" Relief so potent it felt like a physical blow washed over Mr. Sterling. "Thank you, officer. Thank you." He turned to me, his eyes glistening. "Leo, is it?" I don't know how to thank you." "Just get in the car," I said, my own knees feeling weak. I handed the grocery bags to Maya, Sweet Pea. "Take these inside. Don't open the door for anyone but me, okay? Daddy's just going to give Uncle Alistair a ride." She nodded, her trust in me absolute and terrifying. She took the bags and scurried up the steps to our duplex. I slid into the driver's seat of the Rolls-Royce. The interior was a sanctuary of silence and soft, Connolly leather. It smelled of rich mahogany and money. It was the most alien environment I had ever been in. My work-roughened hands felt clumsy on the pristine steering wheel. The drive to St. Jude's was tense and silent, punctuated only by the rhythmic swipe of the windshield wipers and the occasional direction from Mr. Sterling. The police cruiser followed close behind, a constant reminder of the precariousness of the situation. We pulled up under the bright lights of the emergency entrance. Mr. Sterling was out of the car before I'd fully stopped. He turned to me, gripping my shoulder through the open door. His hand was surprisingly strong. "Leo, wait for me, please. I will be back." And then he was gone. Sprinting through the automatic doors with an energy that belied his age, I sat there in the idling luxury car, the police cruiser pulling away after a final warning flash of its lights. The adrenaline drained from my body, leaving me hollow and exhausted. What had I just done? I'd lied to the police. I'd implicated myself in a stranger's problems. For what? A feeling. I waited for an hour, the opulent car feeling more and more like a gilded cage. My mind raced back to Maya, alone in the duplex. Back to the eviction notice? Back to the crushing reality of my life? This man, this Uncle Alistair, was probably already forgetting I existed, swallowed up by his own family crisis. Finally, I saw him walking back out. His posture was different. The frantic energy was gone, replaced by a weary, profound relief. He slid into the passenger seat. "She's stable," he said, his voice a husk of its former self. "It was a scare, a bad one, but they've stabilized her. She's sleeping." He ran a hand over his face. "They said if I'd been another hour spent in a police station." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. He saw the frayed cuffs of my jacket, the permanent grime etched into my knuckles, the deep lines of stress around my eyes. "You saved me from a night of bureaucratic hell, Leo, but more than that, you may have saved me from an unbearable regret." "Why?" "You didn't know me," shrugged, the gesture feeling awkward in the plush seat. "I knew the look on your face. I've worn it myself." He nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his keen eyes. "Take me back to your place. I need to get my car, and then we need to talk." The drive back was quieter. The rain had softened to a gentle drizzle. When we pulled up to my duplex, the street was dark and quiet. The only light came from our front window, where I could see Maya's small silhouette. Waiting up for me, Mr. Sterling got out and walked to his driver's side. He paused, his hand on the door handle. "That little girl in the window. Your daughter?" "Yes, that's Maya." He looked from her window to my face. A man who raises a daughter who looks at him with that much love is a man to be trusted. He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a simple, platinum business card. It was blank except for a phone number, engraved in elegant script. "I am in your debt," he said, pressing the card into my hand. "My name is Alistair Thornwood. If you need anything at all, you call that number. It goes directly to me." I took the card. It felt heavy, expensive, and utterly useless. What was I going to do? Call him and ask for a loan to cover my rent? The shame of it burned in my throat. Sure, I said, stuffing the card into my jeans pocket. Take care of your granddaughter. Gave me one last, long, inscrutable look, then got into his car. The Rolls-Royce purred to life and slid away into the night, its taillights disappearing around the corner, leaving me standing alone in the damp, dark street, the weight of my own problems settling back onto my shoulders, heavier than ever. Chapter 2. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the world washed clean. The storm had passed, but the one in my life was just brewing. The pink eviction notice was the first thing I saw when I walked into the kitchen. Maya was quiet, eating her cereal, the ghost of last night's adventure in her eyes. Daddy, is the king's granddaughter okay? I think so, sweet pea, I said, ruffling her hair. The gesture felt like a lie. I was a king of nothing, ruling over a kingdom of debt and despair. I dropped her off at school, a familiar dread coiling in my stomach. The auto shop was quiet. Too quiet. Mr. Henderson's car was fixed, but he was late on his payment. The phone hadn't rung all morning. I stared at the pile of bills on my cluttered desk, a monolithic testament to my failures. I thought about Alistair Thornwood's card. I took it out of my pocket. The platinum edge caught the light. Anything. He'd said anything. My pride was a stubborn, stupid beast. Sarah had always said it was both my best and worst quality. I could have swallowed that pride and asked for help. But to me, that card wasn't a lifeline. It was a monument to the chasm between our worlds. My help had been a human moment, a flicker of decency. To monetize it felt dirty. It would cheapen it. So, I tossed the card into the top drawer of my desk, where it landed atop a stack of unpaid invoices. A shiny, metallic joke. The day dragged on. I tinkered with a faulty alternator, the mechanical work a welcome distraction from the screaming in my head. I picked up Maya from school and we went through the motions of our evening, a simple dinner, homework, a bedtime story. I read her The Little Engine That Could, my voice steady while my soul was screaming that it couldn't. It just couldn't anymore. After she fell asleep, I sat in the dark living room, the glow from the streetlight casting long skeletal shadows. This was it. The end of the line. Tomorrow, I would have to start packing. I would have to look for a shelter, or swallow my pride and call my brother-in-law, a man who had never thought I was good enough for his sister. The shame was a physical pain, a hot, tight knot in my chest. I must have fallen asleep in the chair because I was jolted awake by a sound, a low, distant rumble. It was early, the sky just beginning to lighten from black to deep indigo. I frowned, listening. It grew louder. Not a single engine, but multiple. Chorus. A deep, guttural, symphonic roar that was getting closer. My first sleep-addled thought was tornado, but it was the wrong sound. This was mechanical, purposeful. I stood up and walked to the front window, pulling back the cheap vinyl blind. And then I froze. My street, normally deserted at this hour, was full. Not just full, but packed. Gleaming flawless, impossibly expensive cars were lining both sides of the road, bumper to bumper, as far as I could see in both directions. Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, Aston Martins, more Rolls Royces. A river of polished paint and chrome, their headlights cutting through the dawn mist, their engines rumbling with restrained power, and standing beside them, every single one of them, was a person. Men and women in sharp dark suits, their hands clasped in front of them, their posture respectful, waiting. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was a dream. A bizarre, stress-induced hallucination. I pinched the skin on my arm hard. The pain was real. Then I saw him, Alistair Thornwood, standing at the foot of my driveway. He wasn't in a suit today, but in smart, casual trousers and a sweater. He looked like a retired professor. He saw me at the window and gave a small, warm smile. I stumbled to the front door, my hands trembling so badly I could barely work the lock. I stepped out onto the porch, the cool morning air hitting me like a slap. The scale of it was overwhelming. There weren't just a few cars. There were dozens. No, more. 100 at least. Maybe 200. The street was a automotive art gallery, a concours d'elegance of unimaginable value, all parked on my cracked, weed-infested street. "Leo," Alistair said, his voice carrying easily in the quiet morning. "What? What is this?" I managed to stammer, my voice a dry croak. "Is this are you?" My mind, reeling, could only conjure one insane possibility. "Is this some kind of elaborate arrest?" Alistair laughed, a rich, genuine sound. "Good heavens, no. Although I did have a very productive conversation with Police Chief Edwards this morning, it seems Officers Dawson and Gable will be receiving commendations for their exemplary judgment and use of discretion." He walked up the path and stopped at the bottom of my porch steps. "Not presuming to come up uninvited? I told you I was in your debt." "Leo," he said, his tone turning serious, "and a man like me, when he is in someone's debt, he settles his accounts." But a simple check felt insulting. It wouldn't have captured the gravity of what you did for me. You didn't just save me a trip to the station. You saw a man, not a bank account. You saw a grandfather, not a CEO. You acted with a courage and empathy that is far rarer than any of these machines. He gestured to the sea of luxury behind him. So, I called in a few favors. Or rather, I made a single phone call to the chairman of the Orrery Group, the largest luxury automotive conglomerate in the world. He owes me a rather significant favor from the late 90s. I explained the situation. I told him about a good man, a hard-working father, who was in the business of making things run. My knees felt weak. I had to grab the porch railing for support. Alistair spread his arms wide. "Is not a gift. This is a business proposition. A transfer of inventory. Every one of these cars is now the property of your new company, Maya's Grace Automotive. The paperwork is in order. The titles are clean. Your first client is the Orrery Group itself. They will be your sole client. Your job will be to provide premium pre-sale inspections, detailing, and minor reconditioning for all their high-value inventory in this region. The contract is for 5 years, renewable. The retainer, which has already been deposited into a corporate account in your name, should more than cover your startup costs. And any outstanding personal debts?" He reached into his pocket and handed me a simple leather folder. Inside was a contract, a bank statement, and a business license. My name was on all of them. Leo Walsh, CEO of Maya's Grace Automotive. The balance in the bank account had so many zeros. I had to blink several times to count them. Tears I didn't know I had left began to stream down my face, hot and fast. This wasn't a handout. It was a hand up. It was a future. It was security for Maya. It was a chance to use my skills, my real skills, not just to scrape by, but to build something. He had even named it after my daughter and her mother, Grace. "I don't know what to say," I choked out. "Say you'll accept the terms," Alistair said softly. "And say, you'll let me take my favorite mechanic and his brilliant daughter out for breakfast. My granddaughter, Chloe, is being released this afternoon. She's desperate to meet the little girl who has such a brave father." Just then, a small voice came from behind me. "Daddy, why are all the king's friends here?" Maya was standing in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her teddy bear dangling from one hand. She looked at the incredible spectacle on our street, her mouth a perfect circle of awe. I turned and scooped her into my arms, holding her tight, my tears wetting her pajama top. I looked over her shoulder at Alistair Thornwood, who was watching us with a quiet, profound satisfaction. "They're not the king's friends, Sweet Pea," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "They're ours." The roar of the engines had faded, replaced by the sound of a new beginning. It wasn't the cars that mattered, not really. It was the weight lifted from my soul. It was the proof that sometimes, in our darkest, most desperate moment, a single act of unthinking kindness can echo into a future brighter than you ever dared to imagine. It was the message that no matter how broken you feel, you were never beyond the reach of grace. And as I held my daughter in the dawn's early light, surrounded by a fortune I had never dreamed of, I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that the most valuable thing I had ever protected wasn't a billionaire. It was my own fragile, beautiful humanity. And that was a treasure no one could ever repossess.